Mira sat on the floor in her torn dress, mascara streaking down her cheeks, clutching the ring Nico had thrown at her. "You were never wife material," he spat before walking out with another woman. She stared at the cracked mirror in front of her, whispering to herself, "Then I'll become someone no man will ever feel worthy of." That was the moment the old Mira died, and the dream woman the world would soon adore was born. Mira was a simple girl living in Jos. She worked quietly as an apprentice in a small tailor's shop. She didn't have much, but she had a big heart. For 4 years, she loved Nico with all of it. She believed love meant being loyal, being kind, being there for someone even when life was tough. She stood by Nico when he had nothing, shared her small wins with him, even skipped meals sometimes just to help him get through hard days. She thought he would see her heart and choose her forever. But everything started to change the moment Nico got promoted at work. He began acting different, talking like he was better than everyone, dressing like he wanted to impress someone new. Mira noticed, but she didn't complain. She just tried to love him harder, thinking it was just a phase. Then one night, she cooked his favorite meal. She cleaned the house, wore the only nice dress she had, and smiled as she served him. She thought maybe it would bring him back to the man he used to be, but instead of a smile, she got cold words. Nico looked at her, not with love, but with disappointment. He said she wasn't good enough, that she wasn't polished, whatever that meant. He called her too ordinary, too small town, like she was something to be embarrassed about. And then, like it meant nothing, he stood up, tossed the ring she once cherished at her feet, and walked out with another woman. Mira couldn't move. She sat on the floor, frozen in shock, with tears rolling down her face. Her heart broke in a way she'd never known before. The person she loved the most had looked her in the eye and told her she wasn't enough. She cried all night, loud, painful cries that came from the deepest part of her soul. She hugged herself on that cold floor, mascara running down her cheeks, holding the ring like it was still a part of her heart. But in that pain, something inside her shifted. As she stared into the cracked mirror on the wall, she didn't just see a broken girl anymore. She saw someone who'd been too quiet, too kind, too loyal to people who didn't deserve her. She wiped her tears, not because the pain had gone, but because she was ready to turn it into power. That night, Mira made a silent promise to herself, not to prove Nico wrong, but to prove to herself that she was so much more than what he said. And in that moment, the old Mira died. A new Mira was born, one the world would never be able to ignore. After Nico left her, Mira's world became very dark. People who once smiled at her began to whisper behind her back. Some laughed when they saw her, saying things like, "She really thought he would marry her." The pain didn't stop with the strangers. Her own friends slowly disappeared, one by one. No calls, no visits. It was like she had become invisible overnight. But the hardest part was at home. Her aunt, the woman who had raised her, didn't comfort her. Instead, she looked at Mira with disappointment and said coldly, "Maybe he was right. Maybe you were never enough." Those words cut deeper than a knife, but Mira didn't argue. She didn't cry in front of them. She just stayed quiet. Deep down, something strong was growing in her silence. She wasn't going to beg for love. She wasn't going to fight to prove her worth to people who had already decided she had none. Instead, she made a quiet decision. She was going to rise, not for Nico, not even for her aunt, but for herself. The very next morning, before the sun fully rose, Mira woke up. She didn't have a plan, but she had fire in her heart. She had no fancy shoes, so she walked barefoot through the streets of Jos. The ground was cold, and tiny stones hurt her feet, but she didn't stop. She walked straight to an old cyber cafe she remembered seeing years ago. Her clothes were plain, her heart was still healing, but her eyes were full of something new, determination. She sat down at one of the dusty computers and asked the man at the counter, "Do you have free websites for learning?" He gave her a strange look, but pointed her to some. Mira didn't even know where to begin, but she started clicking, reading, and writing down notes. She searched for anything: business, design, sewing upgrades, fashion courses, anything that would make her better than the girl everyone looked down on. And then, in a soft voice that only the computer heard, she whispered, "I'll show them who I really am." There was no music, no clapping, no magic, just a broken girl with a dream, sitting alone in a quiet cyber cafe. But that moment was powerful. That moment was the beginning of a transformation no one saw coming. While the world turned its back on her, Mira turned towards herself. She didn't wait for someone to rescue her. She became her own rescue. Every whisper, every insult, every heartbreak became her fuel. She wasn't going to stay small town, simple or forgotten. She was going to rise, and soon, everyone who laughed at her would be forced to watch. Mira became a woman on a mission. Day by day, she worked quietly on herself. She started changing the way she talked, clearer, more confident. She practiced speaking in front of her small mirror, correcting her grammar and learning new words. She wanted to sound like the woman she dreamed of becoming. She watched online videos late at night, learning everything from fashion design to skincare routines. She even joined free classes on marketing, branding, and how to grow a small business. No one saw what she was doing behind closed doors, but Mira was slowly turning into someone else, someone stronger, wiser, and more polished. She also took self-defense lessons online, practicing in her room at night with a broomstick, just to feel safe and powerful. Then she started improving her tailoring. She didn't want to sew the same styles everyone was wearing. Mira began creating her own designs, bold, beautiful, and different. Her pieces didn't just follow trends, they set them. People would stop and stare when someone wore Mira's design. They started asking, "Who made this?" Her Instagram used to be filled with sad quotes and broken words. But now, it was like a different page. Mira posted pictures of her work, colourful dresses, strong poses, classy looks. Her captions changed too. They were now full of hope, wisdom, and quiet power. Things like, "She wasn't born perfect, she made herself powerful," or "Glow up isn't just looks, it's becoming who they said you'd never be." Then, something unexpected happened. One of her designs, a bright red dress with bold patterns and a matching head wrap, went viral. Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. People she didn't even know were sharing her photo and calling her the designer to watch. A popular fashion page reposted it and called her the girl who stitched her pain into power. And that was just the beginning. Another post went viral, then another. Her followers grew every day. Orders started coming in, not just from Jos, but from Lagos, Abuja, even outside Nigeria. Mira couldn't believe it. The same hands that were once shaking from heartbreak were now creating beauty that inspired thousands. She didn't rush. She stayed focused. She stayed kind. But she knew deep down, this glow-up wasn't luck. It was the result of every sleepless night, every tear, every lesson, every whispered promise to herself. No one had believed in her, but she believed in herself. And now, the world was finally seeing her glow. The same girl they said was too simple was now the one they couldn't stop talking about, and she was just getting started. 1 year after her heartbreak, Mira got an email that made her hands shake with surprise. It was an invitation to showcase her designs at a big fashion gala in Lagos. This was not just any event. It was one of the biggest fashion nights in the country. Famous designers, influencers, and celebrities would be there. Mira stared at the message for a long time, then smiled. She had come so far. It was time to show the world. She knew exactly what she wanted to wear. She took her best fabric, rich red velvet, and worked on the gown for weeks. Every stitch was filled with meaning. She designed a dress that would hug her figure with elegance, with a dramatic flowing train and a neckline that showed strength, not just beauty. When she tried it on the night before the gala, she looked at herself in the mirror and whispered, "This is who I was always meant to be." The evening of the gala, Mira stepped out of the car slowly. The red gown shimmered under the lights. People turned. Photographers raised their cameras without knowing who she was. Flash, flash, flash. Whispers started moving through the crowd like wind. "Who is she? She looks like a queen. That's the woman from Instagram, right?" Inside the hall, the glow from the chandeliers reflected off her dress. Men stopped talking mid-sentence. Women stared with admiration. Influencers nudged each other, whispering her name like it was a secret worth keeping. One of them gasped and said, "Who's that goddess?" Mira smiled softly and said, "Mira, just Mira." And then, from across the room, she saw him, Nico. He was standing near the bar, drink in hand, laughing with friends. But the moment his eyes landed on her, he froze. His smile disappeared. He squinted, trying to believe what he was seeing. The girl he once called too simple now looked like royalty. He didn't recognize her at first, not because she looked different, but because she was different. She carried herself with pride, grace, and quiet power. Then, Mira looked straight into his eyes. That one look was all it took. Nico's face turned pale. He remembered. She didn't say a word, but her eyes said everything. I'm no longer the girl you threw away. I became the woman you'll never deserve. Mira walked past him without stopping, her head held high, the soft scent of her perfume lingering in the air. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need to prove anything. Just by showing up as her full self, she had already won. That night, Mira wasn't just a designer. She was a story, a symbol, proof that a broken heart can become the fire that builds a legend. After the gala, Mira's name started spreading everywhere. People shared her photos, her designs, and her story. Blogs wrote about the mystery woman in red, and soon everyone knew. Her name was Mira, the same Mira that once cried alone in a small room in Jos. The same Mira that Nico had said wasn't polished enough. Not long after, something strange happened. Nico sent her a message. It came late at night. His name popped up on her screen. For a second, her heart paused, but not because she missed him. It was the shock, the nerve. She opened the message. It said things like, "I've been watching your journey," and "You've become everything I always dreamed of," and "I miss your kind heart." He even called her his dream girl and said he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Mira read every word calmly. Then she smiled, not out of love, but out of power. The same man who once tossed her aside like she didn't matter, now saw her shining and wanted to return. But Mira had changed. She wasn't that broken girl anymore. She was strong, focused, and full of self-worth. Instead of replying, she went to her Instagram and posted a simple quote. "Funny how some only see your value when the world does." It was short, it was sharp, and it said everything. People quickly guessed who she was talking about. The comments flooded in. "We know who this is for. Tell him the door is closed. Queen energy." Mira didn't say a word. She didn't need to. But Nico didn't stop. The next day, flowers arrived at her studio. Dozens of them. Red roses, white lilies, all arranged beautifully with a handwritten note that said, "Give me one more chance." Mira placed them in a corner, unbothered. Then he started messaging again. Long texts, videos of their old memories, apologies, promises, even a public comment under her post that read, "Please talk to me. I'll never stop loving you." Still, Mira didn't answer. People asked her, "Will you go back to him?" She smiled softly and replied, "I've already gone back to myself. That's enough." Nico kept trying, but it was too late. The girl he left behind had become a woman who no longer needed his love or approval. He was just a part of her story now, one she had outgrown. And Mira, she kept rising, unbothered, unapologetic, unreachable to the ones who once doubted her. Because when a woman heals, grows, and finally sees her own worth, no apology is enough. Mira's life became brighter than she ever imagined. Her inbox was always full. Messages from rich businessmen, popular actors, even well-known influencers. They all wanted a chance with her. Some called her perfection. Others said she was every man's dream. But Mira wasn't the same girl who used to cry herself to sleep. She wasn't waiting for someone to choose her. Not anymore. She had become her own hero. Instead of chasing love, she focused on purpose. Mira started hosting small events for young girls in her community, teaching them how to sew, how to speak with confidence, and how to dream big. She told them, "Don't wait for anyone to tell you you're enough. You already are." She used part of her earnings to launch a scholarship fund. Girls from poor homes who had talent but no support were now able to go to school, learn a skill, and build a future. Mira smiled each time she saw one of them succeed. It made her feel rich in ways money couldn't explain. Then, one day, she surprised her aunt, the same woman who once said, "Maybe he was right." Mira showed up with keys to a new house, a big, beautiful house with a wide porch and colourful flowers. Her aunt cried, "I don't deserve this." Mira just hugged her and said, "Maybe, but I do, and I choose to forgive." Even after all the success, the attention, the praise, Mira never forgot who she was and where she came from. Sometimes at night, she'd walk into her room, stand in front of her mirror, and remember that day, the day her mascara ran down her face. The day Nico said she wasn't enough. The day she thought her world had ended. That cracked mirror was still there. She didn't throw it away. She kept it as a reminder, because in that broken reflection, a powerful woman was born. Now, when she looked into that mirror, she didn't see pain. She saw strength, fire, grace, growth, and she whispered to herself, "Look how far we've come." Mira was no longer a girl hoping to be someone's choice. She had become the choice, the standard, the example. And even though love might come one day, she would never again shrink to fit into anyone's idea of wife material, because Mira had learned something powerful. She was enough, all along. And now, the world finally saw what she had always carried inside. She was every man's dream, but she belonged to no one but herself. Mira was sitting in her studio, sewing a new design, when the email came in. It was an invitation to speak at a women's conference called Becoming Her. At first, she paused, unsure if she was the right person, but then she smiled. She knew she had a story worth sharing. Not a fairy tale, but a real one. One with pain, growth, and power. The day of the event came. The hall was full. Women from different places had gathered. Young girls with dreams. Mothers with tired eyes. Students looking for hope. Mira stood backstage in a cream-colored suit she made herself. No jewelry, no loud makeup, just confidence. When she stepped onto the stage, the lights hit her face, and the crowd went quiet. She held the microphone and looked around, not nervous, but calm, like a woman who had walked through fire and survived. She started softly. "I was once the girl who cried over a man who didn't see my worth. I thought my world had ended, but I was wrong. That heartbreak was my beginning." She didn't sugarcoat anything. Mira told them about the betrayal, the pain, the loneliness. She spoke about how people mocked her, how she had no one, and how even her own family doubted her. But she also told them how she found strength in silence, how she studied at night with tired eyes, how she built her business with no rich uncle or sponsor, just pure hunger and hard work. The crowd didn't move. Some women held hands, others wiped tears quietly. Mira shared how success came slowly, one design, one post, one customer at a time. She explained how her glow-up wasn't just about beauty, but about becoming smart, strong, and unstoppable. She talked about helping other girls, giving back, and staying humble. Then she took a deep breath and said, "Many of us are waiting to be seen, waiting for someone to choose us. But let me tell you something. Don't wait. Don't beg. Don't shrink. Become so radiant that no one can ignore you." For a moment, there was silence. Then, the entire hall stood up. Applause, cheers, even some loud sobs. Mira smiled gently and walked off the stage, not as someone who needed validation, but as someone who had earned respect, love, and freedom by fighting for herself. She didn't just tell a story, she lit a fire in every heart that heard her, and in that moment, it was clear. Mira had not only rebuilt herself, she had become a movement. As Mira's light continued to shine brighter, Nico's world slowly turned dark. The same man who once walked away so confidently was now walking in shame. The woman he had left Mira for, the one he thought was his upgrade, left him just a few months later. She didn't stay when his money started running low. She found someone wealthier and disappeared without looking back. At work, things also started falling apart. Nico got caught in the middle of a financial scandal. He claimed he was innocent, but no one believed him. His promotion couldn't save him. He lost his job, his respect, and soon, his expensive lifestyle. The same friends who used to laugh at Mira with him stopped answering his calls. He tried to start a new business, but nothing worked. It was like life was closing every door in his face. One hot afternoon, Nico walked into a local mechanic's shop to fix his old, dusty car. The TV in the corner of the room was on. The picture wasn't very clear, but it was showing a fashion ad. He wasn't really paying attention until he heard the name, Mira. He looked up sharply. There she was, smiling, glowing, wearing a designer gown on a giant billboard. The words on the screen said, "Mira Ocon, the face of brilliance." She was the new ambassador of an international fashion brand. He dropped the remote from his hand without realizing it. For a few seconds, he just stared. This wasn't the Mira he once mocked for being too simple. This was a woman who had become bigger than his wildest dreams, bigger than any apology he could ever offer. He sat there in silence, surrounded by the smell of engine oil and sweat, while the girl he had once broken looked like royalty on a screen. His chest felt heavy. Regret hit him like thunder. He thought he had traded up, but in reality, he had thrown away gold for glitter. Now everything he once had was gone. And Mira, she had everything he never knew she could be. Nico didn't say a word. He picked up his car key and walked out slowly, like a man who had seen a ghost. But Mira wasn't a ghost. She was a reminder that when you lose someone special because of pride, the world won't always give you another chance. And sometimes, the one you break becomes the one you can never reach again. Mira had stopped believing in love stories. After everything she went through, she told herself she didn't need a man to complete her. She had grown strong on her own, and her heart had healed with time, but the scars were still there, reminding her to be careful. So when Ayo came into her life, she didn't fall easily. She watched, waited, and listened. Ayo was different. He wasn't flashy or loud. He was calm, kind, and real. He didn't try to impress her with big promises. Instead, he showed up consistently, with respect, with patience, and with a heart that saw her fully. He didn't look at her as the fashion queen or the famous Mira. He saw the woman who had once cried in silence, the woman who rebuilt her life from dust. He admired her strength, not just her beauty. He would say, "Mira, you're not just wife material, you're world material." It wasn't just a sweet line. He meant it. He respected her dreams and her independence. He didn't try to dim her light or control her path. Instead, he walked beside her, cheering her on as she chased her goals. Whenever Mira talked about her projects, her scholarships, her business, her vision for the future, Ayo listened with pride in his eyes. He didn't feel threatened by her success. He celebrated it, and in return, Mira let him into her world, slowly but surely. She still protected her heart, but this time, love didn't feel like losing herself. It felt like finding peace beside someone who understood her fire and never tried to put it out. They built together, not just in love, but in life. Ayo helped her expand her foundation. He volunteered at her girls' empowerment events. He offered ideas for her brand. He stood backstage during her speeches, smiling proudly. He didn't ask to be the center. He just wanted to be part of her journey. With Ayo, Mira didn't have to shrink. She could be loud, soft, strong, or vulnerable, and he loved every version of her. He wasn't trying to save her. He knew she had already saved herself. He was just grateful to walk the rest of the road with her. For Mira, this was love. Not because it completed her, but because it added peace to her already full life. She didn't lose focus. She didn't change who she was. She kept building her empire, and this time, love stood beside her. Not in front, not behind, but hand in hand. And when people saw them together, they didn't say, "Mira finally found love." They said, "Love finally found someone worthy of Mira." The night was bright, full of lights, cameras, and whispers of admiration. Mira had returned to her hometown, but not as the broken girl they once gossiped about. She came back as a woman of purpose, strength, and grace. The charity gala was packed with people from all walks of life, all gathered to honor her for her powerful work in women's empowerment. She had created real change, opened doors for others, and inspired a new generation. Her name carried weight now, not because of a scandal, but because of her story. Dressed in a flowing white gown that shimmered under the lights, Mira stepped out of the car slowly, her head held high. Her presence turned heads. By her side stood Ayo, calm and proud, holding her hand gently. Cameras clicked, people clapped, and whispers turned into awe. "That's Mira," someone said, "the woman who changed everything." But just as she stepped onto the red carpet, the car door behind her was held open by someone she never expected to see. Nico. He wore a driver's uniform, and his eyes were tired. Life had clearly been hard on him. When he looked up and saw her, he froze. For a moment, everything stopped. Their eyes met, hers filled with calm power, his filled with disbelief and regret. Mira didn't flinch. She didn't speak. She didn't gloat. She just looked at him and gave a soft, knowing smile, not out of pride, not to show off, but because she had nothing left to prove. Nico stood there, holding the door open, stuck in the silence of his own choices. He had traded her for something that never lasted, and now he could only watch from a distance as the woman he once hurt walked past him, stronger, brighter, and untouchable. Inside the gala, people clapped loudly when Mira was called to the stage. They spoke of her strength, her work, her impact. She wasn't introduced as anyone's ex or anyone's victim. She was introduced as a leader, a light, and a legend in the making. And while everyone focused on her speech, on her grace, Nico stood alone outside in the cold night air, remembering the day he left her crying in the dark. Now she shined like a star, and he couldn't even reach her light. Because sometimes you don't need to fight back. You don't need loud revenge. The best way to answer those who broke you is to rise so high they can't even speak your name without feeling small. Mira had the final laugh that night, and she didn't even have to say a single word.